Okay. Oh, I'm looking at my clock.
We still might.
Sidetracked with the pepperoni.
Pepperoni is for anybody. It's not the size of the pepperoni.
We're good? Okay, thank you. I wish to call order the special meeting of council at 5:30 on September the 6th. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. And notice a video recording. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Does everybody have the late item for 6.2?
Yes, yes.
I'm looking for approval of the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
What?
You want me to read that out?
Agenda.
Oh.
Joseph. I can read it
Excuse me.
for you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. I thought we'd get to it at 6.2, but if you need this, we'll do it. We have a late agenda item from the Director of Parks and Recreation with respect to the provision of instructor insurance coverage. To do this being a special meeting of council and meeting notification requirements of 24 hours and unanimous motion from council to waive the 24-hour public notification requirement to add this item to the agenda is recommended. May I have a mover and a seconder for the following motion? That council waive the public notification requirements in order to add late agenda item 6.2 under reports regarding the provision of general liability insurance for recreation program instructors through the Municipal Insurance Association to September 6, 2022, special meeting of council, and that council approve the addition of the instructor insurance report from the Director of Parks and Recreation as item 6.2.
I'll move it. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. And we've already approved the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll approve the agenda as amended. Second.
Always a twist, eh? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Good governance, good governance. Looking for the adoption of the minutes from August the 2nd, special council minutes.
I'll move adoption. I'll second.
Any errors or omissions? Anything for you, Councillor Horde? Okay. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And looking for the adoption of the minutes from August 16th.
Move adoption.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? No? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Big breath. We're moving to bylaws. There are 5 bylaws today that we're reviewing. We'll be starting with 5.1. The first bylaw item is bed and breakfast and accessory residential dwelling units amendments to the Ucluelet zoning bylaw. This report is provided by the Director of Community Planning. Welcome, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. Just briefly to kind of recap, the bylaw 1310, which is amendments to the Ucluelet zoning bylaw, was first considered by council on May 31st when it was given first and second reading and sent to a public hearing on June 28th. Following that, the next day on the 29th of June, council referred the bylaw back to staff to return it to a committee of the whole meeting for further discussion, and the results of that committee of the whole discussion, you'll recall, took place on July 19th. That resulted in instruction to staff to amend the bylaw, bylaw number 1310. Based on that discussion, that came back, and second reading as amended was given on August 2nd. That resulted in another public hearing, which was held on August 23rd. So at this point, council is in a position to discuss what was heard at the latest public hearing and decide on whether to adopt the bylaw or go in a different direction. And I would just note in the report, as noted, that we have identified there is some duplication in the text of the bylaw, and so that the recommendations include an amendment to remove the duplicate section 404.3.1 through 4, which just is a copy of the section above it. Beyond that, I think it's really an opportunity for council discussion of what was heard at the public hearing, and if there are any questions, I can attempt to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gregg. Who would like to start? Councillor McEwen, did you want to start?
Thank you. Through the mayor to staff. Here we are again with this report, with this bylaw. I did listen to everything everybody said at the open house. In fact, we had 2 open houses on this particular bylaw. And I am okay with 1 through 6 on page 23. Number 7, I would like a slight change in wording. Instead of consistent with a traditional bed and breakfast use, a bed and breakfast must include a minimum service of, I would like to see that say a self-catered breakfast instead of a continental breakfast. It's something we've been doing for 20 years at our property, even though we aren't a B&B, we're guest house owned, but we've included a self-catered breakfast all these years because it simply got us into the B&B directories. So it was more of a marketing thing and a sort of a value-added thing. And 8, 9, and 10 I'm having trouble with because several people at the open house made mention of the fact that travelers are traveling differently now. And before 2020, I met 100% of my guests. So that's a lot of years of meeting guests. But the pandemic actually changed all that. People wanted a self-check-in. They didn't want to meet me or anyone else on the property. And now it's changing a little bit back, and I'm probably meeting about 50% of my guests now. So it has changed, and people don't want to share a door into my house. They want their own entrance. And so I just think several people at the open house mentioned it. Traveling has changed, the way people travel. And I remember being in my 20s, traveling around the Gulf Islands, staying at bed and breakfasts, and they were a bedroom in someone's home. And that was a long time ago. And they did serve you a breakfast that you got to sit and eat at in their kitchen. And most of them were retired people, and they were just kind of adding to their income a little bit. And it was a social thing, too. But like I say, the pandemic, I think, has changed so much of the way people are traveling. I can't support 8, 9, and 10 at all.
Who'd like to go next?
Well, I could go unless the mayor wants to go.
I can listen to a bit more before I get my cue. Do you want
Mary,
me to
you
go?
go ahead.
Okay.
We're also polite.
I know. What did that? What happened there?
Must have been something in the pepperoni.
Blueberry.
So regarding what Councillor McEwen said about line 8 about the separate entrance. The separate entrance, which I agree with what many of the community members said, but you could also, correct me if I'm wrong, there is many bed and breakfasts in town that have a separate entrance and also have the entrance throughout into the home, correct? So you could still have separate entrances to each unit. So you could do either, they could check in individually or they could check in with the resident owner, correct?
Through the mayor, yes, there's language in there around the primary essentially the exterior entrance not being the principal avenue of coming and going to the B&B suite. And this, these amendments were in response to council's interest in sort of defining or shaping the regulations around what's a traditional, if you will, bed and breakfast.
Okay, thank you.
That's all you have?
That answered my question.
I'll just.
Do you want me to say what I want to say first? Or
Yeah, go for it.
So when I look at and I'm not going to refer to numbers or 4.4 or whatever's. I went into this with not wanting to take anything away from the community members who have made their living here for generations and have contributed to the community forever. And maybe by default 30, 40 years ago, whenever these bylaws came into place, and we know when it is, but it was not defined. It was not, there weren't rules and regulations around saying you can't have 3 exterior doors. It has to look like this. It has to do that. It's not there in the history of it. But since Expo and since all that, and you look at other communities, and that was a drive. That was a drive to have people in your home, people renting your life and space out to people who are coming to BC, and it made sense. I believe it doesn't make sense now to do it in certain ways. It makes sense to do in other ways, but what is the right way for us? Because becoming a resort municipality, facing our what we know to maintain acquaintance, we want to have low growth. We've already done great things. We've already said, okay, so these new things, these huge new things that are happening, which will take time, but they will make our growth exactly where we need it to be, won't allow these things. So that's already been done. That's a kudos. That's great. That's a step in the right direction. I think another step in the right direction would be strongly to stand up and say, you need to be of principal residence. This needs to be where you live, where you thrive, where you contribute as your home. And by all definition, it's an accessory use. It is something where you are not, you're dwelling, and this is something that is an accessory to your dwelling, to your livelihood, to your where you're living, but not the reason why you're here, not the only means of your income, not the cash cow that, and I'll put all these terms in it, and I apologize to anybody who takes offense for any of it, but it truly doesn't make sense to me to, if you are taxed as a residence, and this is a whole other problem, to have all these heads in beds as a residence, 3 chock-a-block, door to door to door, when your hotels and motels who've been here for decades and decades and are paying commercial taxes, commercial water, commercial everything, but yet you can do this to 10% of what they do, but you pay 1% of what they have to. I guess. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I know we only have control over a certain amount of things. We don't have control over what BC Assessments does. We don't have control, but we do have control over zoning. I'm not comfortable, I'll say this again, and I'll probably speak up again before this conversation is over. I'm not comfortable taking anything away from those people that have been here, whether they want to or not right now, whether they've stepped up already now or not. I'm against taking anything away from anybody, especially those that have been here and contributed for decades and generations. And I know a lot of people, and I have spent time, and I heard what everybody had to say when we came to our public hearings, plural. And I've also gone out of my way because I feel as though the majority of the people that were here were of a certain populace, of a certain demographic, of a certain, that we didn't reach everybody, that not everybody came forth. So I have, and you all know who you are, I reached out, and what I kept coming back with was more of the same. I could not find what Mr. Gregg and the data might... That's how this all started, was we had the housing needs assessment. We had that done, and we put our hand up and well, I had a teary moment where I said, I think we need low growth, and we agree. We slow and steady wins the race, and we had that agreement. We didn't specifically ask for this to come to us, but it did because of what we did there. And that makes sense. But it doesn't mean that now I agree with what the solutions that are brought forth mean to certain populations in the community. And I've reached out far and wide, and I keep coming back with the same. So although I know those statistics are clear and concise, they admit themselves that there are some glitches, and it's not all, and statistics are what they are. So therefore, I have a heavy heart when I say I hear all the data. I have talked to as many people as I can. I'm saddened by the fact that I'm not getting a level. Everything is leaning towards not making any changes. I do believe we have to make changes. Just like I said, when people chose to put me in the seat, that I said, if we're not moving forward, we're taking a step back, because everybody else is moving forward and then we'll be moving backwards. And I stand by that. But there was still a part about in doing that, we need to maintain the acquaintance. So I don't know the perfect mathematical equation to that, but I do really want to put an emphasis on the fact that I think we should do some of these things now, and I think we should let some things simmer for a bit until we see how the first things roll out. We've already made the right decisions with not moving forward doing these things. We've already said that you need to live in the place to do this, and why wouldn't you? Why do you think you get to live afar? And I get that some people's circumstances are not ideal, but we can't. We need to draw a line. There needs to be a line drawn. We can't make exceptions. You can apply for variance, just like we've talked about many things. And then I'm open to talking about the other stuff at a later date. I don't think we have to move everything forward right now. I'm not happy about I don't think that making some of these decisions are going to solve our long-term housing or short-term housing. It's not. This isn't the solution. This isn't a solution. This is. I like that you just flicked a page and everybody.
I just want to make sure it's
Yeah.
a couple of your points.
Yeah. I don't think that taxing people by taking something away from them is going to make a whole bunch of rental housing, long-term rental housing. This doesn't solve that, which I think it was meant to create more long-term housing. Some of this decision isn't going to solve that. Some of it will, and I'm super proud of the accessory dwelling. I'm super proud of not making it one or the other, and you can do both. And I'm super proud of a lot of those things, but some of those things I still can't support. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for clearly articulating your position on this, because the reality, and I'll let you speak in a minute there, Councillor Kemps. We're not going to get this perfect. And as far as I'm concerned, what's presented here, whether our biggest issue for you, Councillor McEwen, is whether the breakfast should come in hot or cold, or the line, to me, that's something that we can massage a little bit later on. When I look at the core of what's been provided, and I think for most of us that know what's coming before the planning department, the reality is, I've been here for 50 years, and I'm going to try to stay with a couple of my points here, because I will babble a little bit. But I guess the biggest one is, what are we afraid of here? And for me, it's like, I'm more afraid of us not doing something, because I'm not worried about the people who have been living here for 50 years. Those are the ones that are not putting a 3-unit, 3 separate doors in here. They might put a little B&B because something. We're not trying to stifle that. We're just trying to identify is that when any house changes ownership now, the reality is there's a high probability that they can go, oh, you know what? We're allowed to put 3 separate entrances. I don't even know where that come up. And the reality is, we know that there has been a fundamental flaw in probably the definition of a B&B, because a B&B is walking your door, whether it's grab a muffin or you don't grab a muffin. I think the reality is, I don't live by them. And I think that the voice that wasn't heard but is heard on the 3 house parties I've been to in the last 4 weeks, is the fact is you walk in there and nobody's a nightly rental operator. They live here fortunate enough, they have a job, and I think reality is we always have to remember that, because our responsibility is land use. It's not about that person's got a sob story about why they need to be here, why they bought a lot. I don't know who buys a lot thinking that coming to a community to open up a nightly rental, 3 of them, besides someone who has no say. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about people that have no say about what's going on. And I know that I have lots around me, and that if I were to see that get built, that would take away my peace and comfort. And I think we really need to make sure there's a voice that wasn't represented, and it's the people that live here that, you know what, as far as I'm concerned, there's a group that's wrecked it for a lot of other people that maybe would like to have that opportunity. So I'm looking at, again, I told you I was going to babble, but, you know, when I'm looking at this, I'm acting in the best interest of the community. In our strategic plan, you've used the quaintness to the greatness. There is no quaintness in the greatness when on these streets, including yours, Councillor Cole, which when those homes, when Mr. Sandy Leslie and everybody else around you starts to sell, they will become what we don't want them to be. And maybe I'm hanging on to the past because I kind of like the way Ucluelet is. I don't think it's always supposed to be easy for people to make employment here. The people that live on the West Coast have found creative ways to make employment. As Councillor McEwen, who runs a nightly legal guest house zoning, there is an application and there's a path through planning department in order to ask someone, is it okay for my house to be a guest house or whatever? Go do that. So I'm not done yet. And remember, there's no public input when you buy a house. And then next thing you know, here comes the carpenters. What's going on? Oh, we got the jacuzzi going here, and we're going to have a nice little spot here. I didn't sign up for that when I bought an R1 house. And honestly, those that did that, if that was your premise to come into the West Coast, I mean, that's tough. You know, we're talking about hotels. You add another 15, 20 of those, 50 of those, we're acting about another 150 units that are coming here. And then, you know what that does? There's a reason why Little Beach Resort, Thornton Motel, you know, Canadian Princess most of the time was closed in the wintertime, the Pacific Rim Motel, they all close in the wintertime because they are competing against another audience that doesn't have the same overhead. And, you know, and people talk to me about, hey, the election, you know, election's coming up. But I'm like, election doesn't play a factor for me, because if planning department had brought this to us, it doesn't matter. We'd still be having the fruitful conversation. I think now, it's, if anything, it's more important than ever, because the people that decided, because it's COVID and we should have a separate door and a punch code, and that's why I can't I can't talk to you. I think that's a different application. That's a variance. That's you want to have that punch code, fill out the paperwork, make it happen. Let the neighborhood within 100 meters know. Right now, there's none of that. And as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of people that are not happy with what happens. I can list 50 people in this room right now. Will list out 5 residents that they cannot stand, and we're not talking about that. I'm not done yet.
Yeah, I know you're not.
I got a couple more pages.
Yep.
Does the bylaw achieve what we want to do? Like I said, 85% it does. We can. I think that's what the possibility of massaging. It's easier to make some amendments and get some, you know, get some groups and try to figure it out. But thinking that we shouldn't be leaving this room today with a fundamental change about how we believe the community should look, I think we're doing an injustice, and I think we're losing time, because it's a floodgate coming towards them. Talked about applying for variances. We're not talking about hotel. We're talking about B&Bs as what the intended use. I talked to, you know, predecessors, Eric Larson, Diane St. Jakes. They all say the same stuff. This is not what they thought it was going to be. They thought it would be sprinkled throughout the community. We're now sitting up here and realizing that that's not the same. And, you know, I've been here at the table for 8 years with Councillor McEwen, and not once did I ever hear anybody come here going, hey, we need to promote more nightly rentals in residential areas. Maybe I missed that meeting, but I'm pretty sure we didn't ever talk like that. But for some reason, we're talking like it should be a priority, because it's not for me. You know, for a long time, Ucluelet, There's a lot of people living in Yuki that came from Tofino. You know why? Because they don't want that BS beside them. And we're forgetting, and we can name dozens of people that have moved here for a specific reason, and they don't rent nightly rentals. They live in a home. Huh?
Yeah, keep going.
No, I'm trying to read my own writing here. Yeah. So we got to focus on R1 here. This is not about guest zone and
This is right.
and it's not taking away. The reality is you've been always had the right to do a B&B, okay? And if someone thinks that they had the right to do a separate, that is a little something, whether we missed it or there was too many of them. I can't explain, but I'm just talking about what's before us as a bylaw. No, there we go. I know you want to chime in there, so go ahead there, Councillor Cole, if you wanted to
So
rebuttal
what's
there.
before us is a bylaw, which you just mentioned. What this is not about what's going to achieve long-term rentals, because it's not.
Again, I've never said that.
Okay.
I've never said that.
But that is the goal.
No,
of
it's
this.
I've
Yes, it
never.
is.
I've never.
The goal of this is to get more long-term rentals in the community. The goal of
I
this
never heard
whole
that.
program. Mr. Gregg, would you care to chime in on this? The goal of all these advancements are to achieve more long-term rentals. We spoke today. Is that not correct?
Through the mayor, there were a number of goals of council that we put forward that last September, and that the bylaw does a number of things, right? So it's not one goal. The council had confirmed what are the goals of some bylaw changes that could be made to help the housing situation. That's part of it. Certainly adding accessory dwelling units, which bylaw 1310 would do, is another form of housing. Removing the restriction that secondary suites and B&Bs can't happen on the same time, or that a new B&B can't take the place of an existing secondary suite, that could preserve some of the rental housing that's in stock. So that is part of it, but I wouldn't characterize it as that's the goal of the bylaw. That the amendments that are in the bylaw 1310 were really kind of the result of the direction we had from council at that committee, the whole meeting in July, to try and shift what is, previously the bylaw 1310 started with removing bed and breakfast from the permitted uses. That's not the direction that the bylaw goes in now. Rather, it was, I'd say, the kind of direction we received from council was to try and focus that to more allow bed and breakfast still, but have them match what was that traditional type of B&B, as opposed to what has been happening more recently with the advent of online bookings and the value that comes with that.
Thank you, through the mayor. But what we talked about today was that the focus and going back to the housing needs assessment was because of the lack of long-term rentals, the lack of long-term housing. And so when you pair that with what we're doing now, it's not necessarily, and I completely agree with everything that Mayor Noel has said. I don't disagree with any of it. I believe we all probably agree with everything Mayor Noel says. However, I feel as though to achieve what the emphasis was put on, which was to ensure that we have housing for the families and the individuals that have been put out of their housing, nothing we do to change today, and these motions are going to change that at all. Not a thing.
Again, that's your lens, and I appreciate, I respect it. For me, it's not. It's about the land use of these activities of R1s, as far as I'm concerned, regardless if there's a document and a fact. I think they have this naturally started to sway a little bit, and which is it's got a little bit out of control because you got the Me Too effect going on. So, again, it wasn't. I'm not thinking this is going to be the cure for any long-term housing, but I do believe that this ensures the quaintness of our community, ensuring that our neighborhoods, which are very much limited to, because a lot of the a lot of the newer parts of our community out towards Komodos and Odyssey Lane, you would say that they a lot. Oh, you all good? You want a piece of cheese? And I think that is just trying to ensure that the actual permitted uses for an R1 dwelling, I think it's getting a little bit loose, and it's becoming very commercialized. And it's only being commercialized due to the popularity of our West Coast. And that shouldn't be the premise of using the words mortgage. How can I afford to live here if I don't build 3 units beside this person that may or may not have a say? Because what's also getting missed in this is that you don't have a say. What's that?
Say
I don't know if I can say that.
Say what?
Say that?
Say what? You can't swear, but you can say
Then
whatever
maybe you
else.
can't afford to live here. I
Again,
can't,
but that's
I can't afford to live in Turks and Caicos just because I want to have a great town all year round.
I'm
Like
not
there are
bu-
certain things. I'm not trying to be. I mean, I might be like totally sounding crass and whatever right
That's
now.
not our problem. That you bought a house or bought a property or think about buying a house to run a nightly rental.
Then you should probably think about what you can actually fundamentally do, and provide, and afford.
And I'd be pretty certain, Mr. Gregg, is that when a person is coming with house plans, that the planning department is saying, you know what? Try this. Hey, try this house plan. You can rent. You can sneak a few.
I
of these in
guarantee
here.
they're not doing that.
I know, but the reality is they're seeing a lot of that, and that's hence why it's coming to our attention. Because
But aren't the banks? Don't the? Oh, okay, now I'm just sounding stupid. So
yeah,
I'll
no, but
just
then
stop.
regardless, is we don't need. It's just. It's becoming unmanageable,
Yeah.
and it's becoming decisive because I know the people that elected me the last 2 times here. It was about the fact is we're trying to protect our community, our West Coast community, and to me, in that wasn't that that you're all of a sudden going to run a nightly rental of 3 units and maybe 4, or maybe those people that just rent the whole thing out when they leave town. That is destroying our community. It's destroying neighborhoods. And when people go, hey, even, when there's a loud music going on next door, we're not going to race over there and say, hey, can you turn your music down? I mean, we're putting residents that own property, because we're forgetting about the people that actually just want to reside there. Sorry, I know I'm going to babble here, but I just really want to make my point here. And just remember that there's an audience that didn't speak. And those are the people, other than Broadwin and a few others, which have a strong stance on they'd like to enjoy the comfort of their home. Councillor Hoare? Yeah, I'll get back to you.
It's the maintaining the residential quality of the residential zoning, the R1 zoning. And as somebody who actually, I live in a multi-unit, you can't nightly rental it. But I live right behind an Airbnb. And I can't even tell you how many Saturday nights I lie awake all night because they're partying. And my window is, 25 feet from the hot tub. And even though there are notes all over, because I've spoken to the owners, and there are notes all over, keep it down, everything inside by 10, or, it doesn't matter. They're still out there. And it's loud. And so my issue is we want a community. And Mayor Noel said, and he was right, all those people that have moved here away from places like up the road in Tofino that is becoming a community of short-term rentals. We don't want a community of short-term rentals. We want a community of people who choose to live here, raise families here, live here. And I know that you said you haven't heard from a lot of people. I have heard from a lot of people. I work with a lot of people who can't afford to live here, who have lost their long-term housing because the house goes up for sale and it's like, currently has a secondary suite, easily convertible to B&B. That's so the long-term suite goes bye-bye when the house flips. And if you're building a house, there's all the architects that just the ones the planning department is seeing these drawings, like the one they put up at our meeting in August, and they are maxed out floor area for for the B&Bs. They're the 3 separate entrances. They're all of those things, and they can't do anything but rubber stamp it because it doesn't need a variance. It's not too high. It's so as soon as if we draw that line in the sand, and you're right, we need to draw a line in the sand. We need to do something because people are losing the ability to live here. and yeah, we're building, there are places coming in the future, and that's great. And there will be some housing stock, thank goodness. But I'm like, I work with people every day who if I ask them about this, they're like, well, it doesn't apply to me because I don't own a house. And I'm like, but you want to, and you want to live somewhere, you know, two of them that live in their campers year round because there's nowhere for them to live, no long-term stuff. You know, the long-term rental down 2 doors down that is now gone and is now a B&B, you know, and we see people, you know, doing the slow drive, trying to figure out which house is theirs all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's not, and I'll tell you, it's not a single car that turns up there, it's 2 or 3. And it just kind of, I agree there are some things that could be tweaked, but there are so many things that are right in this that it outweighs the things that need a little tweaking. Self-catered is a great phrase as opposed to continental, but that's a little tweak. That you can't run a B&B if it's not your principal residence. That's important. And random conversation with my mother, who reads the Westerly cover to cover every week, and is incredibly engaged. She doesn't watch us on YouTube, thank God. But she's like, if you're going to a B&B, you actually you want that interaction. If you don't want that interaction, you go to a hotel, which has the separate entrance, which has the, and yes, I get the pandemic has changed things, and I totally hear what Councillor McEwen's saying. But as you say, it's now back to you meeting 50% of the people, right? So it's slowly working its way back. And all the times that I've traveled and stayed in B&Bs, that was part of it, was I'm sitting at a table with, maybe there are 3 rooms in the house, and I'm sitting with peeps from 2 other places, and, you know, learning some Dutch, or I'm talking to the Germans, or, you know, I'm having conversations, and the person who's running the B&B is suggesting things to do and little hole in the wall places that we might want to go that are not on the, you know, that are off the beaten track. That's part of the experience of a B&B to me. Personalized. It's very personalized, yeah. And I feel that defining it is important. And I get that there hasn't been a definition in the past, but I think it's time to lay one down. Maybe it's not perfect, but lay it down.
Thank you for those comments.
I think, like,
You're on the radar.
yeah, you've already
Nothing but
talked.
time. We got lunch. Like, we got all night here, okay? This meeting started at 5:30. We're only 40 minutes into it. Water jugs in.
Living here over 50 years, we saw the introduction to bed and breakfast. It was slow, but it is really ramping up. And I think this is a really heavy stance that we're sitting up here doing. But I think this is the first step. I know this is a first step, and I disagree really that would have some housing, some long-term housing stock for our locals in here, because there is homes, and I know a few that have been flipped, and they're, as Councillor Hoare said, their suites have been turned into bed and breakfasts. And so I think we need to like pull it back. I think we need to, and then we'll have to look at our OCP and look at little pockets and stuff, which should have been done a long time ago. But I don't want to live in a community, and I'm sure that 90% of the people, especially people sitting up here, I didn't live here for over 50 years to see what's happening. I don't want to live beside a bed and breakfast. I run a hotel. I don't want to lose my community. So I think this is a good first step. And yes, it needs to be, there's some tweaks and everything. It's not perfect, but this is a good first step.
Okay.
Go.
A question, okay. Questions are important than comments.
I have a question for
Everybody
Councillor
knows that.
Hoare.
It's in the manual.
Question for Councillor Hoare, through the mayor. The Airbnb that's behind you that keeps you awake on Saturday nights, where does the owner live?
That one is a commercial building. The Francis Barkley. But the other one, whose deck overlooks my deck, so I get the cigarette butts in my garden all the time. That one, they do live there. And let me tell you, I knock on that door more than I would like to care to say.
But where does the owner of the Francis Barclay live? Not in that building.
No.
See, I think that should not
Well,
be
but
the case.
that
But
particular,
that's-
what's a commercial
that's a
zone
commercial building,
CS2,
so
so that's
that's
not a.
It's not a
It's-
residential.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'll start my comment then with the fact that I live next to an apartment building, which I can be awake every night of the week if I want to, between domestics and stuff that's going on next door to me. So I think we need to take that out of it because that can happen on any street, next to any neighbor, next to any zone, because we're mixed, whatever. So I think doing the right thing moving forward is important. I think we might get in the weeds if we're talking about spot specific, like you said, because I can say the same thing and it's just a bunch of bull and we live where we live. So you make the best of it. And, sorry, as far as what Bronwyn said, she said also I should move out of my house after my child is out of school and not live there with my cat. So, I'd need to put perspective on that. Sorry, I know that we're in camera. It doesn't matter. Her letter said that you can't live in your house and you need to give it to somebody else who's not living in their big house with their cat after their children in it. So everybody keeps you, not everybody, but you've referred to her a couple of times and I don't quite align I don't quite align my thoughts with hers because, well, my dogs would eat a cat anyways, so it doesn't matter. I want to say out loud that these beds and heads, I 100%, and I know that this isn't the topic and we're not solving this with this, but I want to be very clear to anybody who's listening or anybody who cares that I'm totally against beds and heads not paying a commercial tax, sewage, water, all those things that go along with having commerce happening out of your home when it comes to nightly rentals of any sort. And that includes you, Marilyn, sorry. But you can put your hand up. I'm not done yet, though. Now I can't read my own, like you said. Some things going one way are easy. Oh, yeah. So when we move forward with whatever we're moving forward with, I think baby steps are important in the right direction. I believe we're consolidated on some things we all agree on, and then a couple added. I think if we throw everything at it and then say, oh, well, we can tweak that back in a few months, or the next council can tweak it back in 6 months. It's a lot easier to do if we just do a little bit and then let the next elect do the next little bit, as opposed to doing this and then them taking it back, because now we've opened a can of worms, and in case I'm wrong, it's always harder to go back. And you guys
That's your
can
opinion.
agree or disagree with me.
No, it's.
That's a statement in how I feel, in my opinion. Okay, I think that was in a
Councillor
bad
McEwen, did
printing
you have a
for
couple
right
more
now.
comments?
I pay 3 of each.
You pay 3, so, sorry. So everybody can hear what we're saying. So you are paying residential, but you're paying it 3 times or
Correct.
whatever times.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's great, but that's not the case for most of these situations. Am I wrong?
No, I'm guest house zoned, which is why that's happening that way.
Sure. So
Yeah.
the guest house zones they might be doubled down on, or they might be whatever, but the B&Bs are not. Is that correct?
It'd be a flat rate.
Be a flat rate.
100%.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And we're just spending $16 million on a water thing. So, but I imagine 2023, that those conversations that they're at the table now, I think that doesn't matter who's up here. We know that they're working on these kind of strategies in different subject matters. Did you have a few comments?
Just that we have something, I think, before us to finalize tonight about the business licenses
Yeah.
for
Which is a good start.
Yeah, which is another good start. So I'm all in favor of that. I definitely feel that the owner of the property should live there if they're running any sort of nightly rentals.
I concur.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
And it's in here.
Yep.
And I think the focus for me, when I look at the R1 here, when we're talking about R1 uses, it's about the actual activity of B&Bs. We went back and forth thoroughly whether it should be 1 or 3. We left it at that.
Yeah.
Now the other conversation everyone's wondering about separate entrances, that's a different conversation. That's a different thing that when you talk about tweaking things, that's the one that people are trying to tweak. So I think it's something that it's yes, but it's also people are still going to have the right to be able to do that through a process. Here you go, and with community, with neighbors that are affected, everything else. So it's not like it isn't going to happen. It's just going to be another, but it just can't continue on the way it is today, and that's why they did the freeze.
That's right.
That's why we've done this, to go, look, we have to do an all stop. If you want to run an Airbnb, or sorry, you want to run a bed and breakfast, here are the parameters. Put your little sign up, ding, ding, ding. Here's a business license fee. Have a great time. And if you decide that you would like to do a little bit more, because your house is already circled by a bunch of them, well, I imagine there's going to be a process available to those people that want to put 3 units with 3 jacuzzis and do their thing. Because what we're focusing on now are generally just R1 and what is a permitted use, and trying to redefine B&B. That's what I see in this. Did I see a hand over here? Oh.
So, like I said before, I'm dead set against taking things away from people. However, there are a few things that have crossed my mind in conversations with the district staff and fellow citizens. And
Rochelle, well,
Yeah.
the reality is I've owned a house, and I never once, when I bought the house, even sitting as the mayor of the community, I never thought that doing that on my R1 property is something that would be depending whatever. It's not
I
because
agree.
of financial.
You and I agree. Neither
we
of
all
us have
agree with
thought
it. I
about
think like we bought homes for homes, and if you want to do a little B&B, but the thought that we can slide 3 doors on the side and
Sure.
do everything else, that changes.
okay, hear me now. So,
that-
because I'm coming around,
Larry, you're waking
I'm
up.
coming around a little bit. No, I'm not.
Cheese.
Except just no, the
Load it
cheese
down.
gave me the coma. So, I believe. Yeah, you do. I need some also. I believe that I don't want to take anything away from somebody. If we shrink it a bit, I'm okay, because I don't think people who haven't done it probably aren't going to do it times 3. I'm fine, but I don't want to completely remove the ability and make people have to apply for a permit and the hoops and the cost to do what they. So if you want,
and I agree with you 100%. And I think that is the work that needs to be done in the near future about what that looks like with the fees, ensuring that there are procedures in place in order that flow freely. I get it, but today's question is before us is regarding this bylaw. What we're going to do and how we're going to allow processes, and those people that bought a home and this has been their dream lot and they really wanted to open up this huge not a bed and breakfast, they wanted to open up a 3-unit hotel on whatever street that is. I totally respect that.
I'm not
but
okay
what is
with that.
and that's
I
fine.
agree. I'm not okay with that.
Oh, okay, perfect.
We agree.
Yes.
I'm not okay.
Finally, get that
with,
one. You record
no,
that, Joseph?
No. I'm not okay with 3-bedroom hotel rooms paying residential whatevers everywhere. in
That is
town.
who stood in the room
I
here.
know, but there are still people that by making a blanket decision that we may impact their future, their livelihood. People have been here for decades. Generations of people, we may actually down the road adversely affect them. And I don't believe that it should cost them to apply to maybe jump through some hoops to maybe get. There's got to be some middle ground where we can stop the 3 doors of beds and heads from
If you've
people
lived
who
in town
don't
for-
even live here or live like you're only living here because you can do this. That you're not.
That's the
contributing to
bylaw. That's the bylaw thing, and I'm sure
That's
that
why
if you
we
lived
need
here
to
for
find some sort of way to do it and tweak it. So baby steps, so that we don't have to try to go backwards. Because
I think this is personally, I think this is a good baby step, because the other stuff that's going to be coming will be giving people processes. Someone that's lived here for 50 years, there's a high probability they're already working on their exit plan. I don't think you've lived in Ucluelet for 50 years.
Are you working on your exit plan?
No, I plan to die
No,
here. So,
I plan to die here
that's why I
too.
went to the medical center. Let's get it
Larry,
going
you're
on
planning
here.
on exiting.
That and a hard sports. I want to play some pickleball there in my new thing there.
Pickleball.
But the reality is, that's not the audience we're talking about here. They're people that have come here last few years, 5 years, bought lots, which I'm not centering them out, but they are pushing the boundary about what.
I concur 100%.
Perfect,
But
then. You
in
agree with the
that-
bylaw, then. We'll
no,
call it a
but
question.
in that we're encapsulating, we're in that catchment. You know how you get your catch? It's not all the,
Little bit of
grades
bycatch.
that you want. Yeah, it's bycatch.
That's why I'm saying it's
So-
85% correct, and we'll be able to work with that.
But let's,
So
let's
the
have, here's a
bycatch,
question.
so the
Here's a
bycatch
question.
of 25% is going to be those people who have lived here
15.
the longest, hardest, and might need it the most.
Here's a question though. What kind of community do you want to live in?
The
Well, the same one you
community
got.
that has the bycatch in it, that are the 25% of people who may need it the most.
You are also the one that wants, we all want that lowest growth. We saw how many bed and breakfast applications were on the table.
100%. That's why those 25% bycatch, the Edwards or the Henrys or whatever, we need to preserve what they have for them.
But then what is it going to look like around them? What's it going to look like
It's gonna
around
look
us
like
when we
me
want to
across the street
retire
in that
here?
nasty apartment building next. Not sorry for the person who has the apartment building next to me. Sorry about that, by the way. Sorry, I've referred to it like that for decades, not just since you owned it. Okay, sorry.
No, I like the discussion, and I totally get your passion, because the reality is, what I see in the bylaw, again, I've said it 3 times, it's focusing on what's R1. I don't think we're taking anything away. You can line a bunch of people up, which I have. I think we've all canvassed them up.
yeah.
And I've said, like, is this your intent? You want to help her out, Marilyn? And I, you know what? There's no, and maybe it's because we're fortunate we all bought our homes $300,000-$400,000, and that's why we don't need to do it. But the reality is, would I be moving to Ucluelet to buy $1.5 million house to run a nightly rental if I didn't have a job? Probably not. And I think the reality is there's a sense of entitlement, and there's no other community. There's entitlement. We're dealing with that, okay? Because again, I said it. We are a couple elections away from people with different like-minded sitting in these chairs that don't give a shit. Sorry, that whether it's 10-story buildings or the quaintness of the greatness, because we're going to be gone like little tumbleweeds, and we have to realize if we can hang on to it. I'm not trying to hang on to what Ucluelet used to be. I'm trying to hang on that if people own an R1.
The best we can be in the future.
And if you own a residential home, it's for residential purposes. If you're having difficulties because you've lost your job, you have illness or sickness, you have the right to do a B&B. And you know what? If you have to do a little bit of a modification, go see the planning department. They'll probably help you about the best way to do it. And then you've got some ways out. But to think that we can just walk in, build some external doors, and do that,
agree.
That's what the bylaw is about.
But we're not making.
We're not making what?
But we're not making any safety nets in there for the first part of the people who might need our help in the future, the people who might deserve our help in the future, the
They've
people
got
who
it.
might not need to pay extra or jump through hoops or wait. We're not making provisions for that.
Okay, so-
all we're doing is saying,
Okay,
full
so
stop.
so what you're talking about is now that person, Mr. Henry, let's say,
Yeah.
he wants to do a B&B. So what you're concerned about is more bureaucracy and cost towards to do it.
100%.
But from my stance, and Mr. Greg, we'll get you to chime in. When
100%.
again, but when we're talking about a B&B application, you know, could you talk about what that would look like, and would there be significant charges in fees for someone to do a B&B? Because that's
On
complete.
somebody in a fixed
that's-
income, any charge is a
okay, but
significant
you're going to
charge.
answer that. But that's significantly different than having a variance because you want to put in three units of whatever. So
Is it say we right now?
Yep.
But who knows who's sitting here next? Sorry.
go ahead,
Through
Mr.
Mr.
Greg. We just talk about B&Bs and if there's lots of costs associated with that.
So through the mayor, currently the zoning allows bed and breakfast. So it's not a rezoning or a variance. It's a use that is permitted. The door's wide open to every residential property pretty much in town can have a bed and breakfast. If what you're talking about is a change in the regulations and someone, does what they want to do doesn't fit within that.
No, Mr. Greg. Let's talk about it fits. It's
Okay.
a B&B. That's what she's talking about. So I want to just talk about that path previous, and if this were to be adopted, what would that change be, if any, towards fees
Sure.
and process?
Today, bed and breakfast is a permitted secondary use in the zoning. So if somebody is coming in, say, for to use a room in their house for a bed and breakfast purpose, they apply for a business license. In the future, if this were adopted, it would still be permitted as a secondary use in those same residential zones. This bylaw in its version now does not remove bed and breakfast as a permitted use. So if somebody wanted to start using a room in their house for a bed and breakfast, they would come in and apply for a business license. The rules that are changing in there is what qualifies you for getting that business license. You'd have to now show that it is your principal residence. That would be the new regulation. So if it is their principal residence, really today, tomorrow, it would be no change.
Listen, because we're talking about B&Bs, and you're talking about would it change, and to me, it doesn't.
No.
But what we're trying to tighten up is the fact is those lovely homes that have suites made underneath of them, which are designed because those applicants, regardless, like we're on this.
Let them do it.
Yeah, it's under our watch, so it's fine. It doesn't we'll blame whoever. The point is, we're just trying to identify, like, okay, there's a problem. It's significant because it's all of a sudden when you look at these small streets of ours with no sidewalks and adding 3 or 4 more cars, because one of the highlights for all of us is that people get irritated when people don't park where they're supposed to. I don't, maybe not in the big city, but here we do. And anyway, so did you have another question regarding, because it doesn't go from yesterday till today, doesn't change it. It does change those people who have come before us and said, I've got great plans and we plan to do this and we were going to do this and we love our community so much. Well, the reason they love the community so much is because our predecessors, ourselves, who actively in the community have made it the way that they come to appreciate it. They just found a loophole and we're trying to tighten it up. And if you decide that you would like to build that house with 3 suites and stuff, go sit down with John and Mr. Gregg and have that discussion. Maybe you're already surrounded because you're down Komodo Drive where there's already 20 of them there, and the probability is it's going to be a non-issue.
So I would like to ask through the mayor to Mr. Gregg if we pass the recommendation in the third reading and adopt the zoning amendment today. The definition behind what we're allowing people to do is what?
Through the mayor, the bylaw amendment would clarify what is a bed and breakfast, because we do have a definition of bed and breakfast. The bylaw 1310 would add definitions for principal residence and make that part of what is the B&B use. So there's a definition for the principal residence for a non-property owner and a principal residence for a property owner, because it still would allow a tenant of a property to run a bed and breakfast with the owner's agreement. And so really the difference in those definitions is what do you show to prove that it is your principal residence. In the case of a property owner, is that where you claim the provincial homeowner grant? In the case of a non-property owner, the principal residence, there's a list of things related to your billing, utilities, prove it's your primary residence. Where those requirements are not in the current definition of the bed and breakfast. It's I'd say a lesser, weaker definition. I think it was intended to be the same thing. That talks about it's intended that the property owner under the current zoning or the person operating the B&B, it's the permanent present resident, which is not quite the same as the principal residence of the person owning and operating the B&B.
And that's it.
Baby step.
This is a baby step.
Baby step.
There's nothing that,
Go ahead.
Sorry, to be clear, there's nothing other than that change from what has come before us now, that is coming to us now, that affects, like the 3 doors that we're talking about, the 3 units we're talking about, all those other things.
Those are deleted.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just
I
the,
Non-
I
non-
just want to be very clear that we're making the one step today.
yeah, because we deleted that last time.
Yeah.
So then this is just the baby step about the.
And we're totally 100% sure of that.
Through the mayor, on page 23 of
Been
your
burned a couple
agenda
times.
is a copy of the bylaw 1310.
Yes. No, she's.
I'm just making sure because I'm not maybe as smart as the rest of the board, or I've missed a couple things a couple times. So I want to make sure that I know that it's, because 100% we all think that's amazing.
Through bylaw 1310 is on page 23 of your agenda. There are a number of amendments, and so the regulations of bed and breakfast. And if you like, I can read these changes. It would basically
Yes, please.
replace the section 404, which is the bed and breakfast regulation within the zoning bylaw. So it would now read, bed and breakfasts. One bed and breakfast use will be permitted within a single-family dwelling if all of the following conditions are satisfied for the establishment and continued use and operation of the bed and breakfast. One, bed and breakfasts are only permitted in the zones where a single-family dwelling is listed as a principal use, and the bed and breakfast is identified as a secondary permitted use. It would be also accessory to a permanent residential use and must be administered by an occupant of the single-family dwelling for whom the single-family dwelling is their principal residence. Within one single-family dwelling per lot is permitted, and within a building on a lot that does not also include a daycare center or a community care facility. Number two, maximum of 3 guest rooms may be used for the bed and breakfast with a maximum occupancy of 2 guests per room. 3, the gross floor area devoted to the bed and breakfast use must not exceed 35% of the habitable area of the single-family dwelling in which it's located. 4, the area designated for bed and breakfast use, including guest rooms and any common room provided outside of the residential occupant's personal area, must not contain the following. A, cooking facilities or appliances with the exception of a microwave, toaster, kettle, and or coffee maker, 220-volt supply which could be used for larger appliances, and refrigerators in excess of 5 cubic feet capacity. Number 5, a valid District of Euclid business license is required in order to register a bed and breakfast. 6, off-street parking must be provided in accordance with Division 500, and Division 500 is the parking regulations. 7, consistent with a traditional bed and breakfast use, a bed and breakfast use must include a minimum service of a continental breakfast. 8, a bed and breakfast use must be accessed from the main entry of the home in which it operates and cannot operate remotely utilizing coded entry locks and or key lock boxes. 9, any exterior door to rooms used for bed and breakfast uses must not be utilized as the principal entrance and exit to the bed and breakfast use. So there could be a second door to a patio or deck, but it's not the main route in and out. And 10, a bed and breakfast used is an integral part of the home and must not have a separated or locked off common area. Section 404.2 would say for greater certainty, notwithstanding other provisions of this bylaw, bed and breakfast, 1, must not be combined with guest house, vacation rentals, resort condo, or other commercial tourist accommodations. So no doubling up those uses. 2, must not be combined with guest cottage use unless guest cottage is a specifically permitted use for the zone in which the bed and breakfast is located. 3, must not be combined with or located in whole or in part in a duplex, multifamily residential building, mixed commercial residential building, or mixed industrial residential building. So really it's a use within single-family homes. And 4, must not be located in an accessory residential dwelling unit in a secondary suite or in an area of a single-family dwelling which was formerly a secondary suite. And then that is the section which the last 4 points that I read, that's the part that unfortunately the bylaw duplicates. I won't read them through again.
Councillor Cole, do you have any, because I want to talk about the other half of this bylaw, which we haven't touched about with ADUs, and do you have any other comments regarding this?
404.1, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
4.1? What is it?
404.1, 7, 8, 9, 10. I was previously steadfast against a B&B is what a B&B is, since I have learned that we never had a definition for a B&B to begin with, and understanding that when you put it in perspective, there are a lot of reasons why that isn't a great option. I'm not comfortable with those.
Right. I totally, and again, that's to me, those are small manageable things.
Is that
You're
the
talking
ma-
about
main
you're
access?
talking.
Yeah, they're small, manageable unless
You're talking about the breakfast thing.
unless
You're talking
we
the breakfast.
approve them, and then the breakfast and the entry and such. Those, it's what Marilyn started with. But if we
Yeah.
didn't have this conversation, then everybody out there wouldn't know what we're talking
Absolutely, that's very important.
about. I don't mean to drag this on, but
No, no.
I still. I came into this feeling
Yep.
this way, but before, I just want to own it, that before I felt a certain way until I realized, wait a second, that's not what was written to begin with.
Yep.
And things have changed, and let's be honest.
And reality is the reason 7, 8, and 9 are here because we asked that to be here, and so
No,
we talked about it.
No, we didn't ask any of this to be here to begin with.
What's that?
Well, we didn't ask this to be brought to us to begin with.
You going there?
No, I'm
No,
not.
I'm just
I'm
saying.
not trying to
I think
be
that's a good
dick.
conversation. The community needs to make the decision. I think there's no good time to have the discussion, right? I mean, but it
was
does.
a part of the housing needs assessment,
Yep.
though, that
Yes,
brought
but
forward.
we didn't realize in making that decision that this was going to be a particular topic that was going to be delved into, that was going to be brought in front of us.
We were starting to tick off the boxes of things off the needs assessment.
Sure. And we were doing that, but we didn't know it was going to bring this. And it's great that it's here, and it's great
Yeah,
that we're
this is a
dealing with
step,
it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and 100%. And I'm sitting up here putting my hand up saying, I'm like, wait a second, B&B, that means bed and breakfast. Therefore, there should be a bed and breakfast because I'm really linear. And I stayed at one. I know that's what it is. And so I thought it was crazy that we're delving into something and that people must be doing things that are wrong and they weren't allowed to do that. But they were all along because that was never a definition that we had in place. And I just want to say that out loud. Nobody's been doing anything wrong. That was within
The interpretation.
100%, whether it was intended that way or not. And so now to turn around and do what I steadfastly said, I'm sorry. Of course, a bed and breakfast has a breakfast because it's called a bed and breakfast. It seems not in the way of the world at this point in time, or maybe ever
Things
again.
change. Things change.
Yeah.
Things are changing.
So I'm owning that I have switched. What I initially said was that, of course, it's a bed and a breakfast. I'm saying differently now.
Yep.
That I feel differently because I delved into it and I talked to people and I went out in community. Anyways, I feel differently.
Okay. Anything else regarding bed and breakfasts? I just want to touch base on ADUs, if you don't mind.
You could go on the.
ADUs, been a long time, so I know, again, I'll say this is an 85%. Obviously, there's, whether it should be front yard, backyard, I think this is just a great starting point, as you had mentioned, and, every lot's a little bit different, whether that's more appropriate in the front. So, again, I'm delighted to see it, and again, it's one of those things that we all know that we need. So I'm very supportive of what's here. It could always be tweaked, and going forward, again, it's one of those things that we will tweak because there's been some people going, hey, why isn't it 2 stories? And again, that'll be a future thing. This is a great starting point, and the big one for us I see in this bylaw is ADUs are always frowned upon, and I think that this is just giving it a bit more options for homeowners that want detached secondary dwellings. So it's good. So I'm very supportive of that part. Okay, Councillor Hoare, you got anything?
No, I think the ARDU thing is a wonderful piece of bylaws. Yeah, love this one.
No, and honestly, before I call us to questions or anything else, I just really appreciate the open dialogue. I think it's us as a group wouldn't have been able to probably breach this quite frankly, and if it was earlier in our term, because we're just it is what it is. It's before us, and I think it's a wonderful first step. And we're specifically talking about ADUs and bed and breakfasts and these entrances and where people should be living, and those are different conversations to do with zoning and what's that?
How do we make the amendment?
Yeah, if she's going to propose.
Well, we'll ask that to staff. So, Did you want to ask them the question, Marilyn? Marilyn made a regarding the, you're talking about regarding the breakfast. Can we do a change to that? Or does that go back to a public hearing?
Through the mayor, amendments that are not consequential to the substance of the bylaw, such as we have two sections. One is duplicating the other and deleting that, or fixing a typo. That sort of thing is fine. I'd caution making those kinds of changes to amend those regulations. Should perhaps the bylaw be returned to another public hearing, because it does start to change what is the bylaw what is the amendment that you're making to the zoning bylaw, and so the community should have an opportunity to speak to it.
So for instance, if we say we made that little tweak that Marilyn had mentioned from continental to self-catered, that's not
You could do one, but
consequence.
you just said 7, 8, 9, and 10.
But removing
We're talking
7,
about
8,
number
9, 10
7.
would be too much, and would send us back to public hearing.
Our lawyers might suggest that that could leave your bylaw subject to challenge.
You know what? And again, I've said it from the day one, and Councillor McEwen brought up her points of 7, 8, 9 being a little bit of an issue. But again, like I've said, there will probably be some tweaking going on in the near future, as this is part of me being satisfied 85% of what's been presented here for B&Bs as well as ADUs. I was under the impression you were just trying to change number 7, but if you're going 7, 8, 9, 7 to 10, you're right. That's big changes, and I'm prepared to, call this to question regarding, what's been presented to us, and we do have a few recommendations before us. You're gonna make what?
I'm going to make B. I'm going to suggest that council direct staff to bring the District of Equal Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1310/2022 to the November 29th, 2022 regular meeting of council for consideration.
What's going on here?
Suggested motion here on page 20.
It's the B.
Option B.
Oh,
It's the only way to, if we pass this, it has 7, 8, 9, 10 included. And we're going to defeat that, so we might as well pass this.
we don't know we're gonna defeat that.
Okay, well,
We
I
haven't
can
called
tell
it to
you
question.
call to question, we're going to defeat it.
Well,
Well, then I'd like to have that recorded for sure.
you've made the motion for option B, and I will second that.
Okay.
Okay, so option B. Can you please read it out? No, you did read it out.
Yeah, and then so.
Any
Marilyn
further
second-
discussion on that one?
No.
I'm still of opinion that pushing that off to November 29th.
I don't want to, but.
Well, I'm just saying, pushing
Yeah.
that off, all it does is just pushes things off.
Sure.
And all this does, because we wanted to have the definition of.
It's a pretty big deal. 7, 8,
Those are 7,
7, 8, 9, 10 are a pretty big deal. That is the whole structure of someone's home and livelihood, and how they exist in their own residence. And we've talked many times about how, especially during COVID, we realized it's important to thrive and love and live in your home. And I'm not trying
I
to.
totally get that. I just want to just go back to staff for a moment here, because currently existing bed and breakfasts, even ones that are not conforming, if this were to be passed, all of a sudden the next day they're not going to, you're not shutting down bed and breakfasts, because this is about futures things. This is not about people that have a bed and breakfast right now with that don't make 7, 8, and 9. This is about futures.
Yep.
And okay, you're clear on that?
Yeah, 100% clear.
Whoa,
Ooh, yikes.
payday.
No, 100% clear on that it is ones moving forward, which are only going to be currently zoned ones anyways, because in future, we've already agreed there's going to be no more of the zoning. So we've already done that great step, which I just want to make a point of again right now.
And there's no great step if there is, goes back to November 29th to deliberation, and then it goes to a February 3rd public hearing. So this is something that comes before you guys, or whoever that is, later down the road. So when I stress enough.
It's
that-
not my first choice.
Can I ask one more question?
Yep.
To staff, just through the mayor to staff. So, an exterior door to rooms used for bed and breakfast uses must not be utilized as a principal entrance and exit. Okay. But you can have the main entrance to the residence, but you could also have 3, 2, 1 entrances, exit, really, off the, because I know there's a whole bunch of community members that own B&Bs for years that have one principal, you walk through the front door, guests can do that, or it's 11 o'clock at night, they're checking in, I'll leave the key under the mat, they could enter their outside space. Is that still?
Through the mayor, having a bed and breakfast room or suite with a bedroom and a bathroom that has its own, say, sliding glass door onto a patio, that's a common kind of pattern. This would not preclude that. It would, it's defining it as it should be its main access through the main entry. So if we see a building permit for what frankly we've been seeing, where the house has 3 completely separate
Hotel rooms.
They're attached hotel rooms or hotel suites where their entrance is from the exterior only, that would not comply with this change in the bylaw.
Right.
Number 8.
So it's only, so.
Number 8 is what we all agree on. We agree
Number
on
8, we agree on. It's just the minimum service of a continental breakfast wording, really, that needs to be adjusted.
When we talk, Councillor Cole and Councillor McEwen, I think we all agree that the definition B&B, we've been very, very clear. We've been going back and forth the fact about trying to ensure the compliance of new builds, that they don't have a bunch of little mini hotels, and that's all number 8's doing for you.
Yeah.
Because we know, as we talked earlier, about what would be the avenue for those applicants. They would have a process to ensure notification and rezoning and stuff. So I think we all agree that number 8 doesn't need to be changed as much as you've thrown it in there. The number 7, whether it's continental or whatever, again, that's just a tweak. That I don't think is necessary right now. We've talked about it extensively. And then in exterior door rooms. Again, trying to ensure that this is focusing on bed and breakfasts, and
Not
I
hotel
think
rooms.
7, 8, 9, and 10, all it does, it just emphasizes what a B&B is for definition, and this has nothing to do more than that. I think that we're looking at it a little bit because we're agreeing with
Too
it.
deep, though.
And 7, 8, 9, 10, outside of number 7, what do we use the word outside of continental? Self-catered. So outside of self-catered, whether it's however it comes to you. We're on page 25, Councillor Cole. If you need a moment just to take a look at that, okay, no, I just want, just with what we've talked about, and,
I just want to reference what
yep, do it, take your time.
I think I just wanted to be very clear what the main entry plus the 3 secondary entrances, exits can be, because there's many bed and breakfasts that still welcome the guests through the front door, but if they were a late arrival or they're coming and going during the day, they could use their exterior entrance exit. Still not like a hotel room, it's not secondary, not secondary. Does that make sense?
Through the mayor, I'm sure that is the pattern of many of the B&Bs, yes. And we're also sure that whatever regulations there are, we're bound to see some designs brought forward for building permits that stretch the boundaries of what that is as well.
And that's,
We've seen that.
and that's why we're here
that's
today.
why
It's
we're
because
sitting
we're
here
trying to
doing
do that. So I again, I know there's a motion on the floor, and Councillor Cole, I've given you the time to make your comments there on
I'm just
7, 8,
going to
9.
say, when we're looking at augmenting, whether we can sneak by 7, 8, 9, or 10
I'm not saying
and
that.
justify it. No, but if we can justify it, then that means that there's much room for people to justify it in their own way, which is what's already happened, which is why we're in the position we are.
But 7, 8, and 9 are talking about what some community members were concerned about, that there was they didn't want an entrance through their home. Well, you could have both, but we need to see both. It's a typical, you're not building a hotel here. You're building a bed and breakfast or a suite.
So you're
in
talking
your
about
home.
8, you're not talking about 7.
But 7, there's just a wordsmith change to be changed from continental breakfast to self-catered
Okay,
basket in your room or whatever.
okay.
And
And 9?
that's a question, and that's now a question for Mr. Gregg through the mayor. If we are able to just change wordsmithing like the continental breakfast to catered, self-catered.
Through the mayor, I would think if council's intent is to clarify that what is a continental breakfast is a
clarifying.
self-catered, I believe it's been described as the basket of muffins or croissant.
basket.
That I think that is an amendment that would not be consequential and would likely
Okay.
have a low likelihood of being challenged.
But the rest I agree with. Now that it's just clarifying it in my head that you're
So
allowed
you agree
to
with,
have.
okay.
I
so you
agree
can't-
with, I
perfect,
do
so
agree
you-
with it, because we're not.
Perfect. So thank you. So I just want to we do have a motion on the floor.
I'm
If-
still, and number 8 says bed and breakfast must be accessed from the main entry.
Mhm. It's a bed and breakfast. We're not talking about a guest house or, that whole beast is a different zoning and a different conversation. We're giving the definitions to a B&B. You walk in the door,
Yeah.
and there's many homes in this. There's many
Many.
wonderful
And then what about the
B&Bs
places, like the places with 3 doors on the outside?
that nothing's going to
Well,
affect them.
nothing's
They're
gonna
built.
affect it.
They're done.
They're built already and have their business license and they're ready
So
up
then
and
you're
running.
creating the haves and the have-nots.
Well, if you want
Well,
to
we
say
have
that,
to
but
start,
I
unfortunately,
get
if you
it,
have
I
to
get
start,
it.
but
I'm
you
just
have
saying.
to start somewhere.
I'm just saying that will do that.
Yes,
Well,
but you
it-
have to you have to firmly put your feet on the ground and go, okay, what do we want as a community?
Yeah.
So we have to start
But we
somewhere,
heard what the
or else we
community
could
wants.
just sit here and
I've
just
been out
draw
in
a
the
line
community
in the
hearing
sand.
what they've wanted, and it's not what we're talking about now.
the biggest thing that came up in those public hearings
Mm-hmm.
was the exterior access. That
Yes.
They didn't want people to go through their home.
100%.
They have options here. They have options that they, and Mr. Gregg said it, that you could go to their front door, knock on their door, checking in, or I'm at 11 o'clock and I'm in bed, so your key's under the mat at your secondary exit entrance. So there's still that, it's not coming into a hotel and you have a key code and a fob to get into your room. You still have to kind of check in and meet the owner at some point. Or if it's,
It reads differently, and Mr. Gregg can say what he's going to say, but it definitely reads differently. Must access the main entry of the home in which it operates, and cannot operate remotely using coded entry key locks and or key lock boxes.
Okay.
Or a key under a mat.
again, it's a B&B, and I think that's where we're, if
Getting
the,
hung up.
the bylaw, we don't have a second bylaw here going, okay, what's it look like for a guest house or for a 3-unit?
Yeah, we're not talking about guest house right
I
now.
know,
We're
but you're
about
talking
B&B.
about it.
No, we're talking
No,
about
you are.
B&B right now.
You're talking about we're talking about B&Bs and eligible uses for R1, and we keep talking about,
I'm talking about a B&B right now.
and you want a separate entrance for a B&B?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this says that if we're saying 8 can slide, because a bed and breakfast must be accessed, but we're saying, but yet you can show up at the door. Like we're clouding it already, in my opinion.
Well, I didn't, but that was Councillor Kemps that is trying to.
well, I'm trying to clear it up, honestly.
Well, again, it's a B&B. You come in the main entry, and you can't remotely utilizing any code entry locks. You leave the key under the door. Whether that's 1980s, that's great. But if you want to get to 2022, the reality is you rezone your property in order to use what you want to use it for with notification of your neighbors. That is not the process right now. So we're if you want to have that 3 cordless keys and direct deposit to your bank account, apply for the planning department and rezone your house.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're eligible to do in B&B with these parameters, with a self-catered thing. That's what we're talking about. So that stuff you're talking about, it's a rezoning application and changing the use for R1. It's a ballsy thing going on today, but we need to do it.
Because we're going to make it more difficult. And
No, we're not. We're making it more clear. The fact is, you have an R1 house, and you're eligible to do a B&B.
Except you will make it more difficult for the human in the R1, as opposed to just being able to get their permit to do that. They're going to have to apply for a change, and their neighbors are going to have to agree, and they're going to have to pay for it. So you can't.
Yeah. But no,
you can't say it's all the same.
You do, but again, you've talked about the commerce, and it's funny that you say
no,
that you
I
talk.
agree. I agree.
You talk
I
about.
don't think there's a perfect answer. I think it's
no,
all a bunch
but
of
just
bull.
if you are going to rezone your house,
Yeah.
to do 3 units, to do whatever you want,
Yeah.
and the notification to 100 meters,
Sure.
and you are about to start to bring in your income, you are bringing in probably enough income to pay the $2,500 fees to pay for a public hearing in order to rezone your house. That's a reality.
Sure.
Okay, this is not a $50,000 expense. If you truly would like to build
Except
that,
it's something that you currently don't have to do.
yeah, and the purpose of this is, I would say that you probably need to notify your neighbors that the fact is you're about to build a 3-unit nightly
You're not
rental.
building anything. You're just changing the way you run your home.
No, there's bills.
Theoretically,
All
theoretically, in a pre-built, you are actually just renting out your rooms. You're not building anything.
Well, you can redesign your house.
There's
you
a
can
motion on
renovation.
the floor, though.
Yeah, there is. I know.
there
We're
is.
having a discussion.
Okay, okay.
But anyways, again, I think that I get what you're saying, but that's the whole purpose of this, is that there needs to be more input from those neighbors that are affected, because not everybody signed up to have that beside them. B&B, they can live with it.
But they've always lived next to that. They already bought living next to that. They didn't sign up for
beside
it.
what?
The house next to them with the ability to do that.
There's houses being built right now that nobody,
And they
no
bought,
one's.
they bought next to something that's already allowed or not allowed to do that. Just like the people next to me and the people next to you already have that right or don't have that right. That's already existing. This isn't nothing new. What we're doing is making it something different. It's pre-existed for decades. I mean, this is
No one, again, I've only lived here for 50 years, and I'm not.
Me too.
And again, buying a house at R1 zoning to go blast in a 3-unit motel room is not what neighborhoods need, and that's my strong stance on that.
I agree 100%.
Okay. Huh? And
I
again, that's
agree.
it, and that's what
I
this.
don't know if this is the right way to word it. I agree, but I don't think this is the
Okay.
right way to
Anyways,
word
I
it.
just, for process, if you don't mind, I'll just.
Yeah.
We do have, let me get this right. So we do have a motion on the floor, which is number B, that council directs staff to bring the District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1310-2022 to November 29th, 2022 regular council meeting for further consideration. So all in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's been defeated. So I'm going to get back to the recommendations that are before us here from staff, if someone would like to move these individually.
I got it. I will move that council amends the District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1310-2022 by deleting sections 404.3 subsection 1 through 404.3 subsection 4.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I will move that council give third reading of District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1310-2022 as amended.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I will move that council adopt District of Ucluelet zoning amendment bylaw number 1310-2022.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Thank you very much. Do you guys want to take a little 5-minute-er?
Yeah, I need
Okay, I'll make a motion to make a 5-minute-er.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Whoa, people.
good. You're good.
Orville Redenbacher up here.
What do you need?
No, nothing.
What do you want, the kettle on?
I've still got water.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be done. I would have moved it.
Okay.
Charging me for sitting there for an extra hour.
Okay, moving on to bylaw number 2, 5.2. Item number 5.2 is District of Keelo's permissive tax exemption bylaw number 1318, 2022. Report prepared by the Chief Financial Officer. Welcome, Ms. Monteith.
Thank you. Through the mayor. We have 2 permissive tax exemption bylaws expiring this year. And I say in my report that council has the authority to exempt eligible properties from property taxation for a period of no more than 10 years. The most common ones are properties owned by charities or societies providing services to the community, such as museums and things like that. Pardon me. So in my report, all organizations listed in number 1 are currently leasing district property, and therefore I automatically recommend them for an exemption. This year I did request that organizations not using district property go ahead and apply for an exemption. So we received 4 applications, and I've listed them in sections 2, 3, and 4 of the report by class, along with a brief summary of the services that they offer the community. So in my analysis, first, I just want to say that this is kind of the first year in many years where organizations have actually been asked to apply for an exemption. So my feeling is that if we're asking organizations to work towards self-sustainability, an exemption just shouldn't be assumed. We should also remember that boards do change over the years, and sometimes that knowledge doesn't get passed along. I had one organization tell me that they didn't even know they were receiving an exemption because they do pay property taxes every year, but what it is they're split. So council exempts their recreation class 6, but they have to pay their class 6 business. So it's a really good exercise, and it's a best practice at this point. And I also think it's important for council to have the opportunity to review these exemptions once per term. It's a chance to showcase how the district supports these organizations, and for organizations to fully understand the dollar value attached to it. So overall, the total of the property tax exemptions are within Appendix A and would be approximately $317 rather in 2023 and $43,383 in 2024. This is just an estimate, as we don't actually know what the assessed values of the properties are going to be, nor the mill rates at this time. So essentially, I'm recommending that council approve option A, the permissive tax exemption bylaw 1318 as drafted for a period of 2 years, which would allow for next council to be able to review them again. And it does include everyone who applied, and as written in the bylaw. These exemptions are already included in the financial plan. Except on a side note, I would say I think it's important to start giving some of the organizations a bit of a fair warning and a heads up that they probably should start budgeting for paying some property taxes. If it gets to be too much, a lot of municipalities have to start capping it or really taking a second look at how much the dollar value is attached, because the burden is spread across the rest of the community who are actually paying the tax. So if the bylaw is given first to third readings today, a notice of council's attention will be provided appropriately and then brought back to adoption prior to October 31st. Any questions?
Any question for Ms. Monteith? Councillor Cole?
Through the mayor to Ms. Monteith, I notice, so the West Coast Community Resources Center obviously has 2 lines. I know that they have more than one house in the community plus here. So are those just the houses in the community and not their space here?
Through the mayor, one of them it would be in section. So we received, my report is based on what I received as an application if it was required. So section 1 has their exemption for the space that they rent here. Mm-hmm. And then they applied for
the 2.
No, they applied for 2B, whatever that roll number is, it's 1800 Bay Street.
Yeah.
They applied for one there.
And probably one on you.
They didn't apply
They
for the
didn't
one on you?
apply, we didn't get one for you, but we do still have one permissive tax exemption bylaw in effect. Perhaps that property is within that bylaw.
That was my question as well, but
Yeah.
if they applied for it,
Confusing.
they
Sure.
didn't.
Sure. And then just a comment that the Aquarium Society, ouch. That's it.
Hence the heads up about maybe letting people know that they should apply every year and start budgeting, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good topic to take on. Any other questions for Ms. Monteith? Okay, we do have a recommendation, if someone could move that.
I got it.
Thank you.
Except that I just inhaled it.
Someone will step in.
Somebody else.
I will move recommendation A to give District of Ucluelet permissive tax exemption bylaw number 1318-2022 for second and third reading.
Seconded by,
I'll second.
any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Monteith. Bylaw number 3, I see the next item is for fees and charges amendment bylaw adoption. This report is also prepared by the Chief Financial Officer. Welcome back.
Thank you. Through the mayor. This report is to talk about the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 1316. So at the August 16th regular meeting, council gave 3 readings to the District of Ucluelet fees and charges amendment bylaw, which introduced changes to Schedule C, G, and P, which is building inspection, fireworks, and business licenses. Council also directed staff to put it on the website and in the newspaper, which we did, allowing the opportunity for the public to submit any comments, which I received none. So you're in a position now where you could adopt this bylaw, if so choose.
Okay, and just for process, after the Chief Financial Officer presents, there will be an opportunity for the public to comment on the District of Ucluelet Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 1316, 2022. So, does council have any questions for Ms. Monteith?
No, but I have a comment about the whole newspaper thing. I'll just make it now, and then we
Love
can
it.
just carry
Go
on.
ahead.
It's been brought to my attention by some citizens that some of the font in our things in the newspaper.
That was just me.
Did you say that?
I sent the email last week.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, good. I love it when you make it nothing related, but I love it. Go on.
It's just for some reason our font. No, it was an old
It was me.
an elderly person. Older than you.
Well, you
In
guys.
the
It was
community
he.
said something about having to put glasses. Anyways, because our font
Last
was
week.
smaller than anything else in the newspaper, and I'm wondering if it has to do with the size of space we're
Drives
buying.
me crazy.
And the amount
We're
of
going to get an
words.
answer from Mr.
Okay,
Lawrence.
so sorry. Thank you.
That issue has been identified with staff, and we're investigating why that is, and we'll make the appropriate changes.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing it up, and I think we all agree that it should be at least the minimum size of the Westerly News. It's terrible to read it, so thank you. Thanks for bringing it up. So I'm not alone. I like it.
May I interject just one
Yeah, go ahead.
clarification? I thought I just heard you say that after you adopt the bylaw today, that the public would be given an opportunity to make
No,
comments.
before I
It's
adopt it.
already happened.
Well, I'm just reading the script here.
Oh, thank you.
You set me up for failure here?
No, I think everything's right, and I think what you said is right. But
Why don't you
prior
do
to
this?
adoption, there needs to be an opportunity for the public to make comments. Prior to adoption, there needs to be an opportunity for the public to make comments.
Thank you.
Sometimes he does do this to me. And he puts words in there that...
If no one has anything
No.
else to say, you can throw it out there.
I'm going to do that right now. Are there any members of the audience who wish to speak? Any questions regarding this? No? Okay. Hit the raise your hand icon if you're attending by Zoom, and *9 if you're attending by phone. Clerk, are there any members of the public that wish to speak by Zoom or telephone?
Not at this time.
And have we received any emails to communityinput@uculet.ca or any other late correspondence? Nothing but time.
Pressure. No pressure.
No emails at this time.
Thank you. I see there is a recommendation. Would council like to make a motion?
I'll do that.
Okay.
I'll move that council adopt District of Ucluelet Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 1316, 2022.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, moving along. So, yes. Just keep dragging it. Okay, bylaw number 4, amendments to Ucluelet Business Regulation and Licensing Bylaw. Item 5.4 is a report prepared by the Director of Community Planning titled Amendments to Ucluelet Business Regulation and Licensing Bylaw. After the Director of Community Planning presents, there will be an opportunity for the public to comment on District of Ucluelet Business Regulation and Licensing Bylaw Amendment, Bylaw number 1313, 2022. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. And through the mayor, as we were discussing earlier in this evening's meeting, on July 19th, at the Committee of the Whole Meeting, Council gave direction to staff on regulations of bed and breakfast within residential zones, including some amendments to the business regulation and licensing bylaw. So the business regulation and licensing bylaw amendment, bylaw number 1313, 2022, was given first, second, and third reading at the August 2nd meeting of council, and notice of council's intent has been published. Intent to consider the adoption of the bylaw has been published in the August 24th and 31st newspaper editions, as well on the district website. So this is an appropriate time to provide an opportunity for the public to provide input on the bylaw before considering adopting these changes. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Gregg? Are there any members of the audience who wish to speak? Oh, he's passing, he's holding. Hit the raise your hand icon if you're attending by Zoom and *9 if you're attending by phone. Clerk, are there any members of the public that wish to speak by Zoom or telephone?
There are no hands raised. Does not appear anyone would like to speak at this time by way of Zoom or telephone.
Thank you, sir. And have we received any emails to communityinput@uculet.ca or any other late correspondence?
Not at this time.
Thank you. And I see there's a motion. Would council like to make a motion?
I'm going to try again.
Okay, welcome back.
See if I can do it without dying. I will move that council adopt District of Ucluelet Business Regulation and Licensing Bylaw Amendment, Bylaw number 1313, 2022.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And moving on to our last bylaw of the evening, which is bylaw number 5. Item 5.5 is a municipal and regional district tax bylaw number 1314, 2022 adoption. This report is provided by the Manager of Corporate Services. Mr. Rotenberg, the floor is yours.
So bylaw number 1314, 2022 is a bylaw to request an increase in the municipal and regional district tax rate from 2% to 3% under the provisions of the Provincial Sales Tax Act. The bylaw has received first, second, and third reading. So council is now in a position to adopt the bylaw.
Any questions for Mr. Rotenberg? Okay, pretty straightforward. There is a recommendation.
I'll move that. I'll move that council adopt District of Ucluelet Municipal and Regional District Tax Bylaw number 1314, 2022.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're still friends. It's all good. We have 2 reports. The first report is appointment of a new Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2022 general local election.
Through the mayor, at this point in time, we have two deputy chief election officers, one of whom is leaving us at the District of Ucluelet on September 16th. So what we're proposing here is that Ms. Fortune, who's consented to the appointment at this point, be appointed in her place, and Paula Mason's appointment be rescinded effective September 16th, 2022. Deputy chief election officers are critical to the running of an election. They can stand in if I'm sick, and they have the same sort of powers that the chief election officer has in the event that he or she is unable to do their duties. The deeper the pool of people we have here, the better. So our recommendation is to keep that pool at the same sort of depth. That way we have a bunch of folks who have the powers to get this thing done. Are there any questions?
Any questions? All make sense?
Well, makes sense. I'll move that council appoint Abigail Fortune as District of Ucluelet Deputy Chief Election Officer effective September 6th, 2022, and rescind Paula Mason's appointment as District of Ucluelet's Deputy Chief Election Officer effective September 16th, 2022.
Second.
A second by Councillor McEwen. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thanks for subbing in, Ms. Fortune. You probably got a little bit of time at that before. And we're going to... Good to see you volunteered. And just a 6.2 is the late item. I have no talking points, but it's regarding the insurance, instructor insurance. Ms. Fortune, did you want to speak to this?
Working? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Good afternoon. Oh, good evening. You have two recommendations before you to approve the provision of general liability insurance to contract activity instructors who provide programs for the Recreation Department through the Municipal Insurance Association and the Associate Members Program. The second recommendation is as well to authorize myself on behalf of the District of Ucluelet to enter into a service providers agreement for the provision of general liability insurance for the district's liability insurance held with the Municipal Association of British Columbia. The reason this is before you today is that we've historically been, our liability insurance has been through Aon. Unfortunately, what they were offering us now has become cost prohibitive and approximately basically $1,000 annually for one instructor. This came to light to us on September 1st, and we have limited time and issues with our registration starting tomorrow, and program instructors 8th to 12th will be doing their thing. As we realized we needed alternative solutions, we reopened the discussions with MIABC, who advised the district that the majority of the municipalities in British Columbia, in fact, use this service provider agreement for their instructors to ensure their liability insure the instructors. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. The cost to the municipality for all the instructors is $350 annually, so quite a significant difference. If the district chooses to go this route, the district's insurance deductible would apply to any claim caused by the group, and the district's claims experience would be affected. In order for the district to extend insurance coverage to the instructors group, a service provider agreement will have to be approved by way of council resolution, hence why I'm here today. Liability risk with instructors is deemed extremely low, and we've had, in my lifetime here for 30 years, there's been no claims. The Municipal Insurance Association of BC has provided a reasonable option for the provision of general liability insurance for the district program instructors through the creation of associate membership and Ucluelet Activity Instructors Group and the issuance of a service provider agreement. Is there any questions?
No, it's straightforward. I thank you. And two recommendations. Thank you.
I will move that council approve the provision of general liability insurance for contract activity instructors who form the Ucluelet Activity Instructors Group through the Municipal Insurance Association's Associate Member Program and that council authorize the Director of Parks and Recreation on behalf of the District of Ucluelet to enter into service provider agreements with individual recreation instructors for the provision of general liability insurance through the district's liability insurance held with the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Ms. Fortune.
Great, thank you very much.
So we have two correspondence items. One of them I've never seen before, which is regarding a letter regarding a decision that was recently made. Does anybody have, is this just me that has this cheat sheet?
No.
Or does the group have this?
What?
Okay.
Yeah,
You know, honestly, for me, I think it's, what's the appetite here for the group? We do have the option of pushing this off to our September 20th regular council meeting, and if we want to have a dialogue about it then, or do we want to, is that good?
Yes.
Are you guys okay? I figured so. We're kind of done there. So I would move that, oh,
Maybe Mr. Lawrence can explain. So there's a time limit on reconsideration. It's a 30-day time limit. The motions were defeated on the 16th of August. Your next council meeting is September 20th. So if you were to move a motion to reconsider, what you would be doing today is you would be placing those motions on the floor again, which then could be deferred until the next council meeting. But the motion to reconsider whether you would like to reopen debate on these motions that were defeated has to be done within the 30-day time period. And our next council meeting is on the 20th.
okay, well, I'll open that up. Does myself, the decision was made. Is there an appetite of anyone here to revisit this decision? That's right, across from Frankie's there.
Yeah, no, I don't see any of the points, in my opinion, that the things that we're saying we overlooked, none of those change the reasons I made the decision at our original decision-making point.
I think he's presenting a case for parking because that was the main reason that it was defeated, and I think that's worth looking at because, well, you've all got it in front of you. There is a way to increase parking, even though that building doesn't actually have any.
Looking to my left.
I have no great feelings about the whole project anyway, so I would still go with what I thought and deny it anyway.
Okay, so we got two there. Councillor Hoare?
I concur with Councillor Temps. I don't have any. There's nothing in here that makes me want to change my decision.
So that's no change from initially then.
Yeah, I'll just throw into that the information provided here doesn't change the fact that the density is being increased and the actual owned parking is not being changed at all. They're talking about public parking and such, so no, it's a moot point.
Okay, so I'm hearing that 3 across the board. Then that's it. There's nothing to talk about. You're not, correct?
Yeah.
Joseph? Mr. Lawrence? Okay. And don't have to do nothing. It's just received the correspondence. We accepted the agenda and that was in there, so we don't need to do any more work than that. This other one's just for information. There's no more pages left. So
All I
we
can
are.
say about this last one is I wish I wasn't working because I'd totally be there, but
Oh, no, there's.
Oh, somebody on there wanted to.
No, that was our discussion. So you guys all defeated it last time, and you had the same course. So we are adjourned at 7:26.